Warning, this podcast may contain reference to abuse of a physical, verbal, or sexual nature. This podcast may also include opinions that people do not agree with. Thank you for listening. So, yeah, episode 2.
Episode 2.
The newly named Cretivitea, spelled T-E-A.
Where we're spilling tea, dishing dirt, and all that jazz.
Drinking tea, too. And
delicious.
As you probably noticed, so we upload our episodes on Mondays, but we record them the day after we upload the last one. And yeah, so I assume that you've noticed our little logo of just...
I did.
2 guys sitting in a teacup.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, that's literally how I gain my sustenance. I just absorb tea.
And just osmosize it.
Oh god, yeah.
So yes, this is Ray and...
My name's Ryan. I was here last week, and it was such a fun time. I'm very glad to be back. But no, what we'll be talking about this week follows on from what we were talking about last week. The first topic to talk about, actually, is one that's very close to my heart, and one that has made me abominably angry throughout this entire thing. And it was the murder of Samuel Lewitz in Spain. Samuel Lewitz was a young nurse. He was gay, and he was attacked by a group of men who thought he was recording when he was actually on the phone to a friend. They jumped on him and they beat him until he was dead, and his friend heard over the phone the words "fucking faggot." I've been fuming about this since I heard about it, and it becomes increasingly prevalent to me, and it becomes noticeable that literally there will be no safety for people like me, people like Samuel, for anyone in the LGBTQ plus community until homophobia itself is completely eradicated. And the sad thing is, I don't believe that's ever going to happen, because human beings can be a very hate-filled species. We learn hate, and the people who murdered Samuel Lewitz, though they have been arrested in connection with the killing, whether justice is done is
up in the air.
Exactly. It's a different matter entirely. And it just astounds me that in the year 2021 we still hear things like this, when we should be more enlightened than we ever have been. This is meant to be the time of year that the 20th century hoped would be. This would be the century when everything would change, when everything would be better, when we would all come together as people. And it's become an everlasting disappointment to see that this is not happening ever.
I mean, we're still during, but we're coming to the tail end of the worst virus, but at the same time a nigh on life-changing situation. And you'd think that coming out with something that shook the world like that you'd I don't know, evolve a bit, that we'd learn to get along a bit better. And I don't understand personally the term homophobia, because the idea of phobia is that it's a fear, and in my opinion, the word itself is grammatically incorrect, because there's nothing to fear about the LGBTQ plus community at all. There is no more to fear from you guys. Actually, I feel like there's less to fear in my case from the LGBTQ plus community than there is from the average straight guy walking down the street. Because I mean, the last thing I feel is that someone who has who's just walking down the street holding hands with their boyfriend is obviously going to come and jump and beat the hell out of me. However, a group of guys, just random guys, I feel like they're much more likely, if I were to nod and say hi, to beat me up than a gay couple.
Exactly. And it's become a phobia of mine, actually, to show public affection these days. I'm terrified, really, to hold hands with someone, be they my other half or no, just be there, to be close to someone, to hug someone, that kind of fear, it's impossible to imagine, and yet I go through it.
Yeah.
Because as someone who's queer, I have to be incredibly careful about the people I'm around, because I have to be doubly aware of the social signals that are happening around me. I have to be doubly careful of the people around me who know. I have to be selective about the people I tell, who I let in on and come out to. So it just basically feels the trauma of having to learn again who I could trust has come back again. And I become incredibly angry with straight people, well-meaning straight people nonetheless, but straight people who then say to me, it's so much better for you. And then I look at things like the murder of Samuel Lewitt and I say, I never want to hear you say that again in front of me, because it is not better. If it were better, this would not be happening. These things continue to occur in the Western world. People aren't afraid of straight, people aren't afraid of gay people, they're afraid of love. Because love has never been a popular movement. Because if people knew how to love, they'd treat each other differently. They treat the children differently.
They treat them better.
Exactly. And that's the scary thing. Love has never been a popular movement. And when you have to realise is when you look around you, the people that you're looking at is also you. Anyone of any race, colour, creed, religion, anyone. These people are also you. Because you can be that person. You can be that monster. You can be that cop. You just have to decide in yourself not to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting kind of thing as well, because people sit there and just go, oh, it's gotten better. But at the same time, like, I've had people come up and start fights with me, and I've, my oldest friend, Tim, who, like, I mean, me and him have been known to, you wouldn't believe that we're straight when we're together. Like, we have gone skipping down a hill, like, arms linked and that, like, just having fun as friends.
Off to see the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what we were singing. But the both of us are straight, both of us are partner, we're both in a heteronormative relationship, but at the same time, we've been beat up and accused of being, well, in a lot of people's cases, just kind of throwing, anti-gay slurs at us. And it's like, both of us are straight, but just, we're just
having
two
fun.
Guys hanging out. And it's that idea of, it's, in my opinion, it's ridiculous. Like, I saw a video a few weeks ago now of a man who had, they were at a meeting or something, they had to have their pronouns on their thing. Now, I appreciate the idea of having your pronouns or anything, because then it means that you can't mistake people. If you have your name tag and you've got he, him, she, her, they, them, I'm not up to date with all of them, but insert any others here, commenters. I appreciate that because it helps avoid misgendering, allocating, that kind of thing. And so many people went up to him and purposely called him she, her. This man was a cis man. And it is that moment of, you're transphobia showing, guys. And again, there's that ridiculous word of phobia, because there is nothing to fear from people just
being them.
Exactly. There is nothing at all to fear. I feel, again, as, I'm a straight guy. And I don't know, I feel like heterophobia would be much more understandable than homophobia. Again, no shade to any of the straight people out there who, again, you stand by your LGBTQ friends and that, or who, just isn't an asshole, for lack of a better term. But at the same time, you don't hear of, an anti-straight attack or that.
No.
Wow, there's so many horrific things happening to the LGBT community for no more reason other than just, I can't even say ignorance, just blatant
hate.
Yeah. I can't find a better word than hate, so I feel like we need to add a new one to the dictionary that's like one above that. Because in my opinion, hate comes from an area of, like, if you really hate something, it's because it's something that can really damage someone that you love, or that it can, that kind of thing. It all ties into, that sort of protection sort of thing with hate. However, I don't feel like there's anything to hate about the LGBTQ community. No. So how can you hate something that is completely harmless to your entire way of life, really? I mean, the only thing that you should be scared of from the LGBT community is that maybe they might make you realize that, oh, yeah, there's actually more ways to love than what the media shows.
I mean, the worst thing anyone's got to fear from the LGBT community is the glitter. The glitter gets everywhere.
I'm not even, again, I'm not part of the community, and yet I'm covered in, I swear I have glitter on me already, and, you know, I've just been around Ryan for like 20 minutes.
It's just I know, it's just my fabulousness. I'm like Glinda the Good Witch.
I'm not going to argue with glitter, though. It's wonderful.
Exactly. But no, it's very much a case of the reason why people are scared, why the phobia exists, because it really shouldn't be a phobia, is because LGBT, our very existence, both politically and just through our lives, we challenge an unquestioned assumption, and it challenges the existence of toxic masculinity. We question the very nature of masculinity itself, because gay people can be seen as strong, they can be seen as feminine, they can be seen as anything, they can do anything. And some LGBTQ plus persons are some of the most wonderful artists I've ever met. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to straight people, and I do not mean any disrespect to any straight person here, I find it incredibly difficult to trust straight people.
I can see why.
I told this to my closest friend. He's my friend of 20 years now. And when I came out to him, I told him I couldn't tell him before because I was so terrified of how he would react. And he said, well, no, he was a little hurt by this. I can understand why, because we are best friends. And he thought that I felt I couldn't tell him anything. And no, I can tell him everything. I do tell him everything. And I'm incredibly grateful for his presence in my life. He's one of the best people I know. And with you yourself, it's wonderful to have such supportive allies, but I find it incredibly difficult to trust straight people because I know I will suffer more harm from a straight person than I will someone of my own community, because my own community don't want me dead.
I mean, I as a straight person can't even say that. Like, I can say I feel safer around the LGBTQ plus community than I do around the straight community a lot of times. Like, which is, I find that that's a really powerful thing in a way of course you wouldn't trust the kind of people that would hunt you down and lynch you, you know, simply for not even, it's not even like it's anything ridiculous. It's simply a chemical reaction that works the same for everybody. It's the same reaction. You know, and it's, you're being punished for it. And I as a straight guy can't say there and go, oh no, I'd rather stick with my own community because it's safer, because it's not. I'd rather stick around you guys. I'd rather stick around the LGBTQ plus community. I'd rather, you know, hang out with you and that, simply because it's a safer environment where people are less likely to get the hell beat out of you. Again, like, I mean, I was about to use the horrific words of for an opinion, but it's not an opinion. It's hate. It's an existence.
It's what we deal with really is just base contempt for our existence. And it strikes me very much. And it hurts, because even then we have done nothing but exist. All we've ever asked is just to be treated as human beings. And that goes for every minority who's seen as different. It goes for queer people, it goes for people of colour, it goes for disabled people. We're seen as other, and that's a very dangerous way of thinking, because it's also the mindset of fascism, that the other is somehow the other is unwanted, the other is undesirable, and so therefore the other should be got rid of. And the stories of the war, especially when it came to the concentration camps, when it came to the Holocaust, it wasn't just Jewish people. It was disabled people. It was queer people.
It was black people.
It was black people. It was anyone that was not perceived as desirable. And to hear that my presence is undesirable is very uncomfortable to hear, because this language has been spoken before and it's really not language I want to hear again. Because I always thought that the things that happened to us have been consigned to history. They've not been consigned to history, and it's why I've become very frustrated with modern LGBT groups, like the group I was part of when I was younger, saying that our group had to be politically neutral. That's bullshit, because our existence has been made political by the very people who attack us, both on the streets and in the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah, you can't be neutral if it's against you. It's like it's like we were talking last episode, the fetishization of World War II in Britain. Like, if Britain were to sit there and just go, oh no, we're being neutral, what would have happened?
Exactly.
It's the same with the LGBTQ plus community. You can't be neutral and fight against something. You have to take a stance.
And our neutrality very nearly happened during the war. Yeah. And that's the scary thought. Because it's the words of Winston Churchill: when will the lesson be learned? How many dictators must be appeased before we learn that you cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth?
Mm-hmm. It's that's an interesting one that I can't remember if it was me and you or if it was me and my partner that were talking about it recently. But it's the idea of, like, I you know, like I was saying last episode, I'm a goth, so I get bullied a lot, have been pretty much ever since I started wearing black trench coats and grew my hair out, you know, pretty long. And everyone always keeps saying, don't drop to their level, don't fight, don't take that stance and that. And I feel like looking at the LGBT community, or any people of color's community, that's not an option. Sitting there and, again, like me in a fight, sitting there and not doing anything led to me getting beat worse. Mm-hmm. Because then they knew they could get away with it, and the teachers would be like, oh, but you didn't fight back, so I'll give you a pat on the back. Mm-hmm. That's degrading. It's
degrading in every sense. So in order to not be attacked, in order to not be hurt, you surrender your identity. Like I said in the last episode, the only way you cannot be attacked is that you surrender your identity, therefore you yourself do not exist, therefore you become part of the flock. You're just another person, whereas to stand out easily, though it's hard, to stand out is hard, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, even in a flock, there are outliers. There should always be outliers. Mm-hmm. I mean, my favorite bird species is the corvid species, which is the derivative of crows, ravens, magpies, all black, kind of feathered birds, and the blue jay. Mm-hmm. And I find that is beautiful, that in a species of bird whose entire representation is like darkness and depression and that kind of thing, you get this adorable little blue guy that's just like, I'm here, I'm part of this, I just wanted to be different. And it's, in my opinion, that brings so much vividness into the species. And it's the same with humans. You can't all be the same, because that takes away the intrigue, that takes away the uniqueness. And I feel like it's not fair to expect the LGBT community or people of color to not be themselves in any way, because one, it's quite literally not a choice.
No.
And yeah, which means that just almost the circumstance of your birth means that you can't afford to be neutral lest your existence be eradicated. You have to take a stance.
Exactly.
And it has to be a stance, unfortunately, against those that would attack you.
And that leads us on to the second point. And because attacks have now been happening, they've been happening very prevalently in England. And it is very... I find it both flabbergasting, but at the same time, I am in no way surprised. Because, obviously, England lost to Italy. And
well done to the Italian team for, winning. And again, well done to the English players for, how hard you fought, everyone in the penalties.
I know. The England team played splendidly. However, to the English fans who have been acting monstrously, shame on you all. Shame on you all. Because this is literally a case of these 3 young men who act like kings, and they played magnificently, and they did their best. Alas, it was not enough. The better team won, but that does not mean that does not mean that these young men should hang their heads in shame. Nor is it an excuse for fans of the England team to treat these 3 players with absolute contempt and blatant racism.
Yeah.
It is completely unreal. It is completely unreal. I saw this actually. I saw it yesterday, and I thought this is a perfect explanation. English fans have placed their dreams upon these 3 young men who trained hard and played magnificently. They played with such fury and passion and everything. And when they fell short, now these fans have turned on them because they have lost their dreams. It's unreal. It's unconscionable. It's disgusting. And Italian fans had been attacked in the stadium. People of colour had been attacked. People have been stabbed. People have been assaulted. It's unreal. And then I realised someone had said, you treat the members of your team in this way, you deserved nothing to come home.
Yeah.
Absolutely deserved nothing. And I agree with that completely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because I feel like, and I mean, this isn't just because I'm Scottish, I feel like it's vindicating that it didn't come home. I say I'm Scottish, I'm also half English. But it's vindicating that it didn't come home because it's that idea of the bullies didn't win. Let's admit it, the English team have been playing amazingly throughout. But the English fans have been deplorable just as much. Like, the way they treated that poor German girl when Germany lost.
Yep.
Like, again, my heart goes out to her because she wanted to watch a game. In my opinion, there is nothing wrong with a game.
No.
It's when it becomes an excuse for racism and abuse and bullying. And England's fans have shown that in many ways, that's all football is to them. It's an excuse to be deplorable, even to the people who have almost won you the victories that you so covet. The victories that yous haven't earned, that people like Marcus Rashford and that have earned for you.
Oh, Marcus Rashford, he played magnificently, and even better, he shamed the UK government into feeding its poorest children with the free school dinners. And and for someone on Twitter to say, penalties over politics, son, penalties over politics. I went through I lost my temper. I thought that was just disgusting. It is completely unreal. And for Priti Patel to then call the kneel against racism as gesture politics, and then to say, oh, this is disgusting how they're being treated. No. She allowed this to happen because she said that fans had a right to boo against such thing as, quotes, gesture politics, and when the players were kneeling, to stand against racism. And racism is a very, very prevalent problem in Britain. Indeed. Heavily so.
I mean, if I were... I'm white. And
same.
Even I've been attacked for... As if any of you have noticed, I don't have a British accent of any kind. And I've been attacked for that. I can't imagine how people have been attacked for, having coloured skin or having a distinctly, not even American accent. It's terrifying. And the idea that I can't remember, what's her position in politics?
She's a Tory.
No, I mean her...
she's
obviously a Tory.
She's the secretary. She's a minister. I cannot remember what it is.
I feel like her position, got around doing some research now. If I'm correct, her position is meant to be to stop things like racism.
It really is.
And especially as Priti Patel is a woman of color. And I feel like even like both with her job position and with just being a person of color, she should be fighting more for people with color and to close the gates that would allow racism through. Yes, so let's say, for argument's sake, that kneeling is simply a gesture. That gesture symbolizes that there is a problem in the world that needs sorted. There is a virus, figuratively, that is just as bad as the literal COVID, which is eating away at society and at people's dreams. So yeah, sure, it might just be a kneel. Yeah, it might just be a political stance. But that stance screams that people need help and that stance needs to be taken. Again, like with the LGBT community, it's a stance that, yeah, sure, they're showing a gesture. They're showing a gesture that change needs to happen. And I feel like that should never be put down, especially by another person of color. That they would dare to stand against horrible things.
Yes, our Home Secretary, the UK government Home Secretary, she's also responsible for the anti-protest bill being put through, the policing bill, that gives the police more power to judge whether people can protest or not, peacefully protest. So the police can crack down on peaceful protests whenever they deem fit.
Which I feel...
This was after the Sarah Everard murder. And groups of women came out to show their support in vigils, very peaceful vigils. The police attacked people. And it was just horrifying to witness. So we could not peacefully protest. We could not hold pride. But the fact that football mobs were able to do whatever they pleased.
Like invade Wembley Stadium.
Exactly. People without tickets pushed through barriers, invaded Wembley Stadium, caused riots, attacked people. That is totally fine, apparently. And the fact that Priti Patel and Boris Johnson would not condemn these actions, it wasn't until later that they said, "Oh yes, this is terrible."
A posthumous condemnation isn't good enough.
Exactly.
Like Trump with the Capitol.
Exactly. Posthumous condemnations do not work. They are of no help whatsoever, because when we need action, we need action. It must be done. You cannot sit on your hands. And it astounds me that in this day and age, Boris Johnson said, I believe earlier this year, that he wanted to change the narrative of racism. And so in doing so published a report that said that Britain does not suffer from systemic racism, though there are cases that are outliers. But apparently it was an excuse for this report to pat Britain on the back.
Our entire system
was built on racism. It has been built on racism because it was also built upon imperialism, which in itself is a racist idea. And look at India. We invaded, we pillaged, we plundered, we raped. We did all these.
We broke the country in two.
Exactly. We broke countries. We took their heritages. We stole from them. And yet to say, but this is the endemic problem of the people who view themselves as the victors, is that the victors forget, whereas the oppressed always remember.
But it's the job, in my opinion, as, again, I'm talking from, again, a very privileged position here, being, white, cis, whatnot, so I'm not anywhere near as oppressed as, most people that I know. But even then, it's the job, it is the responsibility of the victors and those with power to change that narrative, to stop horrible things from happening. Yeah, you won World War II. Now stop fascism from ever arising like it did in, the 40s, in 30s to 40s Germany. But no, that's come up again. We managed to, the suffragettes managed to finally begin getting the movement for women's rights, and people sat there patting themselves on the back like, look, we've done good. No, you haven't done good until everyone is equal, until there isn't this divide. And unfortunately, very unfortunately, the oppressed quite literally don't have the legs they need to stand on to fight that oppression. It is up to the people with the privilege, it's up to the people with the power to stand alongside the oppressed and say, this needs fixed. We do not want to stand in a system that benefits from the suffering of a classist, a racist, a homophobic, a sexist system, because it is a system that inevitably will just lead down the same road as the 1940s Germany over and over until we change it. So we can sit there and go, yeah, we won. We've won nothing unless we ourselves don't change it as well. And to sit there and again, to let things like the AIDS crisis happen, to let things like COVID unbalancedly affect people of color communities, because unfortunately, due to the way the system is rigged, they're less better off. And to then pat yourself on the back going, oh, we're not racist. Yes, we are. This entire system is racist and needs to be, even if not completely torn down to its core and rebuilt from scratch, we need to start replacing parts of it, and we need to replace them now.
And see, that's the endemic problem with a racist society and with racism in itself, is that you can remove every racist there ever has been. That still won't work, because the system upon which it is built doesn't. Because it doesn't work that way. You can remove every racist from the system imaginable. It still would not work, because the system itself is built to underprivilege certain people, and usually those are people of colour. Because it's very easy nowadays for a person of colour who has all the qualifications, has the right mindset, has the right goals, to then be superseded essentially by Martin with his 1 GCSE and probably his 3 teeth between his family, because our system favours that. Our system favours the person who is very much like ourselves. It favours whiteness. It favours what we perceive as the ideal Britain.
Well, yeah, and it's the same. I mean, I know that America, did its whole War of Independence and that to split off from Britain, but it kept that inherent racism we were built on. It kept that same imperialistic unfairness. And I've been recently very invested in a show called Prodigal Son. Michael Sheen in it. Fantastic acting of a serial killer. Just, can you do nothing? But it's I feel like season 2 has very much touched on some very accurate points with one of the detectives, Detective Darnell, who is a person of color, and his own force attack him. Like, not his team, but the police force attack him. And the system itself convinced him to drop it because it would be more hassle for him than it would be for them. In a system where, and unfortunately, the show itself may be a fiction, but the system works like that. It is more trouble. I mean, in college, for instance, was trying to have someone reported for racism. Because between the way he treated a person of color, and even my name isn't British. Ray is just it shortened. But the way that he always misspelt my name on purpose. And he rejected someone's artwork for being, quote, too Asian. One, it was based off of the artwork of Borderlands, the game, which is American, but she just happened to be Filipino. So of course her art's too. And I tried to have him reported for that, and I had to go through a 1.5 years worth of fighting and kicking and screaming to get this reported and get this done. And yet, in the end, they dropped it with, yeah, but you're just one person complaining about it.
One person is all it should take.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, sure, I am one person complaining about this, but at the same time, if I'm one person complaining, how many hundreds are being affected by this? I just happen to be that kind of one outlier that has a total justice boner, and it's like, nope, I'm not letting this slide.
No, absolutely not.
And if that's in our education system, imagine what it's like in our policing system, in our politics system.
And it's endemic in our policing system, because there was the athlete who was with his girlfriend and his young child and was stopped and searched by being outside their house and outside their car. The police came in, thought something was happening, and just stopped, searched him. And I'm sat there just going wait, what? And the mother of his child was just going like, he's done nothing wrong. He's done nothing wrong. And she was filming everything, and the police tried to stop her from filming. And I believe there's a state in America, actually, that said the law has changed. I think it's in Colorado. I'm not sure. I would have to look it up.
Americans listening to us, please do give us more information on
Thank
that.
you. Because I saw this, and if an incident does happen, the police have to provide unedited body cam footage of the incident. If they edit it, or if the body cam has been switched off, they will the court will immediately assume there is malefaction involved. They will therefore drop the case. The case that the police have brought, they will drop it.
I feel like, as nice as that is, I feel like if the police has decided to turn the camera off, I feel like it should be turned around.
That's the thing. No, they will drop the case the police have brought, and they will turn it on. The police are going like, why did you switch off your camera?
Yeah.
What are you trying to hide? Because the court will immediately assume something shady's going on.
Good.
I want to know what you did. And it's endemic. And it was another American case. It was in Chicago. A 13-year-old boy was shot in the chest. His hands were raised. He had nothing in his hands. The police just fired. He was running. We don't know why. But he stopped. He turned. He raised his hands. And the police still fired on him. This was a 13-year-old boy. And a 12-year-old boy, some years ago, I cannot remember his name, he had a toy gun.
So this was the BB gun incident,
It was a BB,
wasn't it?
yeah, it was a BB gun. He was 12 years old. I do believe he was neurodiverse as well. The police still shot him, a 12-year-old.
Now
A
thinking
child, essentially.
that, like, at the time this happened, me and you were teenagers.
Exactly.
And we're neurodivergent. So imagine
It's horrifying.
the fear that causes. And it's, in my opinion, I don't know what the paperwork system and that is like in American policing. But over here, I don't know if it's changed. But I remember my grandfather putting an entire stack of papers in front of me going, this is what we have to fill out if we use pepper spray. Like, and I'm talking, this thing was like almost a novel. It is insane the amount of paperwork you have to do over here just for using pepper spray. Because guns, I mean, we do have armed police and that for certain things and that, but guns for a majority over here, other than for hunting, are not allowed. So I want to know what's the paperwork system over there like for guns? Like, are they willing to fill out like 400 pages?
Probably
or is
not.
it just, did they have a gun, tick box, no one's going to follow up on that?
I don't know what the paperwork's like. But then it just brings me back to Breonna Taylor, that poor woman. The police executed a no-knock warrant when they already had the person they were after in custody.
Then there's no need for a warrant.
That's the thing. Apparently this squad didn't know. So they burst into the house, ran up the stairs, and obviously, in order to protect his property, the owner of the house had a gun and was asking what the hell was going on. They shot Breonna Taylor as she slept in her bed. The only charges that are being pressed are for the bullet holes that went through the wall.
That's the charges that need to be pressed are for
Murder.
first-degree murder.
Because they went in there with intent and they waited a full half an hour before they sent for the ambulance. Breonna Taylor was still alive.
They could have at least tried to save her. That is a sign of blatant racism, because one, there is no way the squad didn't know, simply because anyone in that department could have radioed in and been like, okay, no, we're calling this off. Secondly, what happened to the good old fashioned, like, everyone's sitting there going, oh, we need like manly chivalry and that. Well, where's your manly chivalryness of not attacking someone that's unarmed? Like, not visibly armed. And, again, someone's sleeping.
Only one person was fired. No one has been arrested.
I feel like they all need to be charged, or at least interrogated, because, it's that idea of, like, you can sit there and go, not all men, not all cops, I'm the pretender, but at the same time, if you're there amongst 6 people, and one of those 6 shoots someone who's asleep, I mean, even the person owning the house or in the house had every right to pull out the gun and be like, what the hell's going on? I would have that kind of reaction over here with the kitchen knife. If suddenly police officers came in bursting down my door without previously warning me something's happening, or even the least they could have done is knock on the door and be like, look, we need to come in, I would happily open up the door to them. Granted, again, I have white privilege on my side.
The only
But
thing
if they
that
burst in, I'd have a knife there and be like,
the only
you don't have a warrant.
No, the only thing that prevents people like you and I from being shot in the night is the colour of our skin. And
Which
someone
is terrifyingly
and someone
unfair.
and a neighbour, a white neighbour, of someone who was shot that night, in her own doorway, in her own home, by a police officer, literally said, the only thing that separates me from her and the only reason why I am alive is because I am white, and therefore I use my white privilege to say this needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. And my heart goes out to the families of the victims of such things, because the problem that is endemic in America is the fact of there is no control. It's even with a presidency, it has become anarchic, and it becomes incredibly frightening that when Trump encouraged people to march down to the Capitol building on Capitol Hill, and then people burst in.
My question is, why on earth does that not happen on the left side? Like, we can have a president. I mean, I'm, very much a sliding scale of I stand with my own morals and my own standing, and wherever that happens to lie politically at the time, that's where it lies. I kind of follow my own thing. But at the same time, idealist, that's the word for me. But the fact that Trump was able to go, no, this is wrong, this is corrupt, we should march on the building, and suddenly tons of people do, and the police let them in, nearly, or some of them did. Why don't the oppressed get that kind of, like, I have seen, like, how many protests have we seen in our life? Because it's been a lot of protests.
And it was I found it also very disturbing, because when the Black Lives Matter protests were happening, protesters were being
much violence.
And it wasn't even from the protesters' sides. And then I saw the march on Capitol Hill. The only thing that saved them was the fact that they were all white. And I remembered someone being interviewed saying, well, it's a revolution, we're fighting against tyranny. I looked at this man who was being interviewed, and I said, this bitch doesn't know a thing about tyranny. No. This man doesn't even know the meaning of the word tyranny, because he has never experienced tyranny in his life. I know who has experienced tyranny, and those are LGBTQ plus persons, people of colour, indigenous people. They have all known tyranny because that is their inherited trauma. That is the trauma of their generation.
Of their, not even one generation.
No, it is the trauma of countless generations, and they are forced to relive that. And the reason why they are forced to relive that is because white people think they can do that again. I remember there was someone had said there's going to be another trail of tears during a football game, and I thought that was probably the most horrific thing I've ever heard. But then again, I've heard plenty of horrific things. There is now a laundry list of horrific things I've heard in my lifetime, and it is appalling. And I said that was the insensitivity of it. It is literally the insensitivity of white people to the inherited traumas of different cultures, of different races. It's appalling, because white people think they are top dog. And I'm sat there just going like, we do not deserve to be top dog. We are not top dog. White people essentially are pathetic.
In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways. And it's just like, and this is talking as a white person who has the privilege of not being in danger because of my race. It's just, I still can't believe it. And it just feels like the civil rights movement that occurred in the 50s to the 60s and 70s.
Any civil rights movement.
It just feels like it was all for nothing, because we still have not learned. And I see a lot of white people commenting about Martin Luther King and how he was a peaceful man, and people say, why can't they all be like that?
Martin was not peaceful.
He was not. He also
That's
said
what made him great.
And Martin Luther King also said, riot is the language of the unheard. Because Martin Luther King, great man, he was also a provocateur. He was a rabble-rouser. He encouraged riot, the same way Malcolm X encouraged riot. And it's unreal.
I feel like an interesting one. Now, I doubt that anyone that disagrees with our views in many ways has probably gone this far into the second episode. I feel like they probably got 2 minutes into the first, before never coming back. But if people are here and you don't quite understand the kind of perspective and that, the easiest analogy is that, have you ever been trying to get someone's attention and they're completely blanking you, they're ignoring you over and over again? So, I mean, some people, again, I've ignored bullies and that, and they've gotten violent. And people, generally, you get frustrated, you get louder when people don't listen. You might, slam your hand on the table, but you need something to get the attention of the person that just refuses to listen to you for no other reason than they don't want to listen to you. Riots are that fist on the table.
Exactly.
Riots are that raised voice. Riots are where we could sit there and go, can you please change things for the next 100 years, and no one's going to listen because it's too inconvenient. We need to make it inconvenient for people to not change, which in a way brings up a point that I was wanting to make at some point, which is I'm very sick and tired of the way that politicians are very good at using the common people as a weapon against the oppressed. And it's no fault of common people, and it's no fault of the oppressed. It is the way that the narrative is twisted. Because take Extinction Rebellion, for instance, when they blocked the streets in London. Unfortunately, they ended up turning the common people against themselves because they got in the way of... And I understand that we need to cause change, and any means necessary helps. But unfortunately, we live in, I believe the term is postmodern world, where it doesn't matter what the intention is. If you're not the rich person, you're wrong. I feel like we need to find a way of protesting or a way of changing things that gets the message along without being able to turn the common person against us.
I also find it interesting when you talk about that, and I actually wanted to bring up this point. It was to link in with Black Lives Matter when they were all complaining, why are they doing this, why are they doing that? And I then said, if you're a fan of the musical Les Miserables, if you're a fan of that story, you have no right
To ask.
whatsoever, not even to ask. You have no right to cry as you do when the revolutionaries die. You have no reason to cry over the people you love in that story who are lost. The ABC Society, the boys on the barricade. You've got no reason to cry because essentially what Black Lives Matter was doing is essentially what the boys on the barricade were doing. And if you say, why can't they be like this? Why can't they do that? Why are they doing this? They're doing the exact same thing the boys on the barricade were doing. So therefore, if you then say, oh, I can't agree with this, you've got no reason to love Les Miserables as you do. Because that is literally all Victor Hugo was doing. He was talking about people who had had enough of the way things were. And that is the essential story of Les Miserables. It is the wretched, it is the miserable people rising up and standing up to do something that is right. And in the end, the tragedy of Les Miserables is the fact that nothing changes.
And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, that's the tragedy of, especially currently, the world.
Yeah.
Of nothing changes. We have fought, and we have, we have screamed, and we have shouted. We've been beaten. I say we as the rabble rousers, the the kicked down, the oppressed, that kind of thing. And I say that more for the, I say we, but I mean, I'm just kind of, again, I'm one of those ones that I'm just there to piss off daddy kind of thing. I have all the white privilege in that. I just can't stand the way the system bullies people. But it's that kind of thing of Les Miserables shows the story of people fight and are willing to die just to change the way that people treat their kids and the future. And the idea that people can't understand that's all Black Lives Matter. That's all that, any protester is doing. I mean, if you can sit there and go, the people on Capitol Hill had every right to stand up for their views, then why are you so shocked that there are so many black people and people of color and LGBT people that are out there trying to live, trying to gain the right to exist?
Yeah, so many women, so many LGBT people, so many people of color, and also just the way that those of Asian descent had been treated at the start of this pandemic, it was atrocious.
Yeah.
Because Asian people were blamed throughout, who had nothing to do with it, essentially. The blatant racism of Britain shows very much, and it just reminds me of when we the rabble-rousers want to change things, it just reminds me of the lyrics from Les Miserables. It's did you see them going off to fight, children of the barricade who didn't last the night? Mm-hmm. And that just shows the futility, because again, nothing changes. But what Victor Hugo was able to do with that story is the fact of he encouraged people to make changes. Mm-hmm. He encouraged people to seek out the better, because he knew very much, because he was a revolutionary man himself, he knew that in order to change, things have to happen, because he went from being a monarchist like his mother to a revolutionary like his father, because his father fought in the Napoleonic Wars under Napoleon. And it just strikes me that when we have such a history like our love of Les Miserables, of our need to change,
why don't we change?
Exactly, because we see oppression, we see homelessness, we see everything like this, but Britain, who is meant to be the 6th largest economy in the world,
who's meant to, think of how most British people act and almost feel. They feel like they are the centre of the world.
Exactly. We could end homelessness
Why don't we
tomorrow.
Change it?
It's like we could easily end homelessness tomorrow. We could easily get people like Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, all these people, the 14 to 15 richest people in the world from the Forbes ranks,
and just
to change things. Like, effectively, all these people together could end world hunger for the next 13 years. They could change the climate for the better. They could help that. They could do anything. It's the fact of they choose not to. Because I saw this quite recently, and I posted it, and it was about Smaug. How Smaug would be considered the 15th richest creature in the world, because I think it was the treasure he was hoarding was I think about $41.5 billion worth.
Yikes.
And yet he's the 2nd richest fictional character, but he's the 15th richest character on the Forbes list.
Which is a scary comparison when you think of Smaug.
Exactly. A gold-hoarding dragon is the 15th richest. I found that astounding. And it's also the fact of, even if we were to tax the rich, it would be but a drop in the ocean to them. In the ocean of their wealth, it would be but a drop that is taken from them.
All we need is that drop.
Exactly.
In a lot of ways.
And it's the fact of they see everything that's going on and they choose to do nothing. It's when they choose to do nothing. And then people started saying, oh, they're going to colonize space and space tourism and stuff like that. And then it's just like, well, the reality of it is they will not be comfortable in space, so they will come back down. So they will be on Earth. When everything goes to shit, they will be here, and their money will not protect them.
No.
Because when everything goes to shit, nothing will protect you. Nothing will protect you. And that's quite a scary thought.
But it's a thought that people like the LGBTQ plus community and people of colour face every day.
Yeah, because like Audre Lorde says, your silence does not protect you. It didn't protect me, so it will not protect you. And that's actually a writer everyone should really read. A fantastic revolutionary poet, Audre Lorde. Her collection Sister Outsider and her book Zami, A New Spelling of My Name. Fantastic. She called herself, she was black, feminist, mother, warrior, poet, and she was fantastic. Oh my god. And to listen to her, to listen to her talk about poetry, to talk about all these things, about how, and again, her other collection, Your Silence Will Not Protect You, that became quite prevalent now in the era of Black Lives Matter. A lot of black authors became prevalent again, like Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, James Baldwin, Audre Lorde. And it was incredibly important because she's also, she was a writer who, not just as a black woman but as a lesbian as well, was going against the grain, and she was fantastic. She was such a powerful poet. And the same with James Baldwin, who was black, gay, who had fled America to live in Paris. And when he was asked, and when someone said to him, it was a British interviewer actually, said, well, what do you say to people who said, oh, it's okay, he escaped it? And Baldwin had said, from what have I escaped? Yeah. What am I escaping from? Where would a fleeing black man go?
There's nowhere.
I know, and I can ask that the same of any minority. Where would a fleeing anyone go? If you're fleeing oppression, if you're fleeing the threat of death, if you're fleeing anything because you are not perceived as the norm, where can you go?
That's why. I mean, there is nowhere, and I'm pretty sure
you can go.
There is none of us, like no oppressed person has the money to start their own country.
Exactly not.
Until the day that someone that's absolutely insanely rich decides to become a philanthropist and make a country for the oppressed. We're just gonna have to try and change our own. And that comes down to protesting. That comes down to speaking out, especially if you are LGBTQ+, if you are a person of color, speaking out and making your voice heard. And it also comes down to straight people and white people to help them get their voice out there.
If you have a voice, it is your duty to uplift another.
I mean, if there's anyone, I doubt there is, but if there's anyone in, the area in Scotland and especially LGBTQ plus or person of color that would like to get their voice out on here, that is an option. I am more than happy to let people say their piece because it needs to be said and it needs to be put out there. If that's over a random podcast on YouTube, or if that's by, it's like I was saying to you a couple of weeks ago, by literally painting it into the street. Because that doesn't get in anyone's way. And most anyone's going to be angry at is it challenges their opinion. And in my opinion, that needs done. Like, someone really needs to paint Dundee, like, just can you hear the people sing across the entire square? I swear.
Oh, God, yeah. Absolutely.
We're not allowed to be loud because of the new law. No one said we can't be colourful.
Exactly. I completely agree with that.
But on that note, that is our time. Is there any finishing words that you'd like to wrap up with?
Yes, actually. We never got to talk to it properly, but hopefully next time we can.
Yes.
The return of theatres on July 19th. I really hope you all have a fantastic time, and well done for sticking this all out. You are all fantastic, and break a leg, everyone.
Indeed.
To the people at Phantom of the Opera currently rehearsing, I wish you all the best. And Lucy St. James, the first ever woman of colour to play Christine Daae, my favourite character in any musical. I wish you all the best because, girl, you are amazing. And I hope you slay it on that stage. I know you will. To everyone at Wicked, to everyone at Les Miserables, at the Sondheim Theatre, to everyone at the Mousetrap, to everyone in every theatre in London, or any theatre in the country, I wish you all the best.
And to any viewers and that, as well as to the staff, but you already know this, stay safe. Stay protected. Make sure that our theaters and our creative industries can stay open by keeping each other safe. Masks may not be mandatory, but they will still save lives. And it just occurred to me that the premiere of this video will be on the 19th.
Oh, excellent.
So, yeah, hopefully that'll be as valid as any. Enjoy the theater. I am so happy it's back.
Same.
I will be there. I will be social distancing, and I will be wearing my mask.
It's actually a really good thing, and I hope the listeners of you, because it's a little bit of publicity, there's a tour of Bed Knobs and Broomsticks coming out, and I am so excited for that.
I look forward to that.
As do I. I totally will somehow sneak up onto that stage and sing along, because Bed Knobs and Broomsticks was one of my favourites as a child.
So yes, in conclusion, well done to the English players and that for getting as far as you did. Well done Italy for winning. Good luck to all the theatre people out there, and
to you, the ordinary listener, thank you for listening in. And again, do look after yourselves, keep safe, and remember, do not be afraid to be you. Do not let the bastards grind you down.
Yes, especially. That's what this whole podcast is
exactly.
about. Exactly. But yes, thank you. And
not at all. Thank you for having me again.
As always.
Take care, everyone.